You're listening to the radio during a Dimension-Rift Catastrophe. The sky changes color without warning now. Some days it bruises violet and leaps ash. Other days it fractures like old glass and bleeds threads of pale green light through the clouds. They said it was radiation at first, then magnetic storms. Then some said it wasn't weather at all, but the sky itself, beginning to thin like the world, was unraveling from the top down. I don't think anyone really knows anymore. What's left of the world doesn't run on facts, just rumors, and the scratchy voice of the next survivor, still broadcasting. People like me. The earth didn't end with a bang. It ended with strange, silent flickers moments when you'd blink and a tree would vanish, or your shadow would stretch the wrong way. Then came the places that folded in on themselves. Towns just gone, with only heat shimmer outlines left behind, like scars in the air. People started calling them rift zones, and if you wandered too close, you'd hear whispers that weren't yours. Sometimes people came back from them, but they weren't quite right anymore. The environmental collapse had already begun years before. Long droughts and failing crops turned fertile lands into brittle husks. Fires rolled across the Midwest until there was nothing left to burn but memory. Oceans swallowed coastlines and regurgitated old warships, bloated corpses, and plastic soap. Much plastic, but the dimensional rifts made everything worse. Like wounds in space-time had torn holes in the rules of cause and effect. What was once stable became unpredictable. Rivers reversed course overnight. Forests grew black and thorned in days. Buildings sank into soil like it had turned to quicksand. Some places flickered between day and night like a broken projector. Others were stuck in an eerie kind of stasis, caught on a moment no one remembered. Cities, if you can still call them that, are no longer centers of life. Most are just steel skeletons and sun-bleached advertisements flapping against empty towers. Downtown Atlanta fused with something else years ago. The concrete pulses there now, like breath. People stay away. In Los Angeles, the air hums at odd frequencies that make your nose bleed if you linger too long. Chicago is ... gone, just gone. Not even ruins, just a gap on the map. A place where no roads lead anymore. Whatever government still existed at the beginning of the catastrophe buckled under its own lies. Emergency broadcasts stopped a year into the rifts. The satellites winked out next first, one by one, then all at once, as if something had reached up and plucked them from the sky. Some people think there's still a bunker out there, a remnant of command running on old routines and denial, maybe. But no one's heard anything solid in years in place of government. There are factions, some organized, most not. There's the Church of the Third Eye. They believe the rifts are a test of spiritual purity. They wear lead mesh over their eyes and sleep on magnetic stones, claiming it keeps them anchored. Then there are the rift walkers scavengers who go into unstable zones to find pre-collapse tech or medicine if they can make it out alive. A lot don't see. Most people, though just survivors, small groups, nomads, families that travel by instinct and necessity. Trust is rare. Barter is sacred. Ammo is more precious than food. And silence is the new language of survival. Some old institutions tried to adapt. A few community libraries became trading posts. 1 or 2 hospitals held out for a while, but clean water and antibiotics don't grow back. The last real university was overrun 2 winters ago. The rift opened under their reactor core and bloomed a cold blue dome that never goes dark now. Some say there are still people inside it, teaching, writing, ... frozen in time. The ground itself isn't safe. Cracks appear without warning, some of them glowing faintly like embers. The animals have changed, too. Not just more aggressive stranger, deer with too many eyes, birds that fly in perfect geometric loops. I once saw a pack of dogs that moved like they were controlled by a single mind, twitching in sync, howling, in chords. Nothing is certain. Not sunrise, not gravity, not even memory. Some days, I swear, I remember things that never happened, waking up in homes I never lived in, hearing names that taste familiar but aren't mine. But we endure. That's what people do. We patch together lives from broken radios and salvaged soup cans. We share stories over fires, careful not to use names. We listen to voices in the static, hoping for maps, for news, for signs of life that don't dissolve by morning. The world ended, but didn't finish dying. It just got weird and mean and cold in ways warmth can't fix. Still, some of us keep speaking, keep listening, hoping someone's out there. You're listening to the radio during a Dimension-Rift Catastrophe, and I'm still here. You're listening to the radio. During a Dimension-Rift Catastrophe, my name's Caleb Ives. Used to be a field technician for NOAA, back when that still meant something. Before the signals warped, before the storms moved. Sideways, before time itself started acting like it had a grudge. Back then, I calibrated weather stations, repaired satellite uplinks, fixed solar sensors on wind farms. Just a guy in a reflective vest trying to keep the data flowing. I used to think that if we could just measure what was happening, we could stop it. That optimism didn't survive the year of the flicker. Now, I'm a voice on the airwaves, broadcasting from what used to be a ranger station clinging to the edge of the Washita Forest, one of the few places where the trees haven't walked away yet. You laugh, but it's true. Whole forests drift now roots, tearing themselves free like they've got somewhere better to be. I talk to the static because it talks back sometimes. That's the thing about rifts. They don't just warp space. They mess with memory. Radio signals loop through holes in time. I'll hear my own voice answering me 3 minutes late, or someone else's message that hasn't been sent yet. Some people think it's ghosts. Others think it's echoes from parallel worlds bleeding through. I don't know what I think. I just keep talking. Every night, I crank the generator by hand and push the signal out as far as the ionosphere lets me. I report weather patterns, trade rumors, call out coordinates where food caches might be buried. Sometimes I just tell stories about the world before, or the things I've seen out there. I don't know if anyone's really listening. Maybe you are. I lost my wife, Miriam, in the early days. She was a geologist, loved rocks more than people most days, but not me. She had this laugh, this big, startled laugh, like it always surprised her that something was funny. We were stationed in Kansas, studying microquakes in the aquifers when the first rift opened. It tore right through the bedrock like it had a purpose. The ground folded like paper, and she fell, just gone. I waited by the edge for 3 days, I screamed into it, dropped a rope down once, even though I knew it was stupid. It never hit bottom. After that, I wandered, drank too much, thought too hard. I ended up with a busted shoulder and a permanent limp after a scavenger crew jumped me outside Little Rock, took my supplies, my radio gear, my maps, left me to die under a rusted water tower humming with residual energy. Whatever the rift had done to it, it was leaking sound like fog. That's where I found the station. Or maybe it found me. The ranger station was still had some solar panels, still had an antenna tower bent but functional, still had an old ham rig with a cracked display and a signal booster someone had retrofitted from microwave parts. I patched it all together and started talking again. I think I survived because I couldn't stop needing to witness. That's all this really is, witnessing, logging what remains, mourning what's lost, letting the story out so it doesn't rot inside you. These days, I live like a raccoon with a journal. I boil water in tin cans and sleep in a corner of the transmitter room lined with old military blankets. I rigged up a rain catch on the roof that fills maybe once every 2 weeks if the fog's heavy enough. I trade weather updates for supplies with a caravan that passes by every 2 months. They call themselves the Lone Circle. They believe the Earth is reclaiming itself, and the rifts are part of that. Don't know if they're right, but they've got decent soap and coffee made from bark that doesn't taste like death. I've seen things I can't explain. I've watched an entire pond freeze over in seconds, humming like a tuning fork. I've seen children with eyes like mirrored glass who speak languages I've never heard. Once, in the haze of summer, I followed a shadow that looked like Miriam's silhouette through the woods for 3 hours before it dissolved into mist. Most days, I don't know what keeps me going. Maybe it's the hope that someone will hear me, that someone will reply. Maybe it's guilt like I owe the dead something. Or maybe it's just inertia. You survive long enough, it becomes a habit. But there are moments, small ones, where the world feels almost ... sacred, when the air settles just right and the static clears for a breath, and you can hear a song drifting through the wavelengths, one that no one remembers recording. Or when a child's voice crackles through and says, "We're safe tonight," and you believe it just for a second. I keep a notebook. It's not for mids, for whoever comes next, if anyone does. It's full of weather patterns, rift behaviors, coordinates, safe zones, danger zones. I've mapped what I can, cataloged what I couldn't stop. There's even a page marked Miriam, where I write everything I wish I could say to her, like I'm carving memories into time just in case it bends back around and she can hear them. I haven't lost my mind, not yet, but I've definitely misplaced it a few times. It's hard not to out here. Time isn't stable. You'll walk east for 3 hours and find yourself back where you started. But now it's raining black petals and your watch is counting backward. I once lived the same day 3 times. Each version ended differently. But through it all, the voice holds mine, yours, ours. The voice over the airwaves. The voice in the dark, reminding the world it's still here. So I broadcast every night, even when the antenna crackles with frost. Even when I'm sick. Even when I think I might not wake up again. Because someone has to bear witness. Someone has to say, "We were here," and if you're out there, if you can hear this, I want you to know something. You're not alone, not yet. You're listening to the radio. During a Dimension-Rift Catastrophe, the storms don't come from the sky anymore. They rise from the ground, boiling up like bruises in the dirt, pulsing and humming with a frequency that makes your molars ache. And when they hit it, you're unlucky enough to be close. You don't get wind, or rain, or thunder. You get distortion. That's what I call it. Others call it riftfall, or spatial collapse, or the wave. But the effect is the same. Physics forgets itself. Your compass spins. Your shadow fractures. People vanish or split. Sometimes they come back, but they're never whole again. Not really. This is the crisis we face now. Not just drought, not just famine or weather. This is collapse, dimensional instability, and it's accelerating. It started subtly, a shimmer in the air over Nebraska, a tremor in satellite telemetry, then the first anomalies, birds flying in impossible formations, clouds spiraling upward like reverse waterfalls, oceans humming at frequencies only animals could hear. I remember the NOAA briefings back before the feeds went black. Terms like quantum shearing and localized time dilation were tossed around like sandbags during a flood. But none of it explained the smell of ozone before a rift opened, or the way glass turned soft around the edges when it was near, or the fact that maps just stopped making sense now. Now it's a constant threat. Riftfall strikes in cycles, though no one's cracked the pattern. Maybe there isn't one. Sometimes it starts with a low-frequency hum, like a subwoofer buried in the soil. Then the air thickens, colors bleed, light bends. At impossible angles, you get vertigo, nausea, a sense that your bones want to walk in a different direction than the rest of you. And then the collapse. The world folds in on itself. I've seen a deer turned inside out mid-run. I watched a scavenger scream for 2 whole minutes before he phased through the floor, not fell-phased, like the earth had given up holding him. And the scariest part, it's spreading. For a while, we thought if we just moved inland, stayed off the fault lines, kept low to the ground, we'd be fine. But the rifts don't follow geography. They're not tectonic. They're not meteorological. There's something else like the fabric of reality is wearing thin. And stress points are appearing wherever pressure builds. Water is scarce. Not because it's evaporated, but because it moves. Rain collects in sinkholes, but those holes shift. I've filled barrels only to find them bone dry the next morning with no leaks. Sometimes the water just ... relocates. I hiked 12 miles last week to the river gorge I used to pull from, only to find the entire ravine filled with crystal sand and upside-down tree roots. Food's harder. Crops, mutate roots, grow into coils. Leaves warp into slick, transparent membranes. I once found a grove of what looked like peaches, but when I bit into one, it tasted like seawater and iron filings. The plants are changing, adapting to the instability, but not in ways we can use and fuel. Forget fuel. Combustion engines stutter near rift fields. The combustion cycle breaks down timing shifts. Spark plugs fail, or worse. Fire doesn't behave the way it used to. I've seen flame twist and loop back into the fuel line, burned an entire transport convoy to slag. My station runs on solar wind. The sun cooperates. Sometimes it flickers, just ... disappears for hours. No eclipse, just gone. The panels charge. Maybe heat a meal if I'm careful. Food, I ration. Water, I scavenge. I've built dew catchers from copper, wire, and tarp. And sometimes I fill half a canteen overnight if the wind's still. But I can't travel far, not anymore. The land is unstable. You might take 10 steps in one direction, end up 3 miles off course. GPS is useless. The satellites don't align anymore. Time doesn't either. I've seen watches tick backward, wound a pocket watch just to find it's now showing tomorrow's date. I've mapped what I can, marked zones where the distortion is strongest, usually by what I call glassful, areas where natural surfaces start showing mirror-like reflections. If you see trees reflecting the sky like a pond, run, you're in a rift fringe. What I do know, these rifts aren't just random, they're increasing. I've tracked an average of 2 to 3 new riftfall events per week in this region alone. The pulses are getting closer, stronger, more violent. Temperature anomalies precede most major events. A sudden drops, sometimes 20 degrees in 10 minutes. Barometric pressure spikes, electromagnetic interference, radios hum, static bends into rhythmic pulses. I think the Earth's magnetic field is unraveling or being rewritten. The poles are unstable compasses, now swing toward what? I've marked as fracture zones, not north, something else. Maybe mass concentrations under the crust, maybe the gravitational effects of the rifts. Whatever it is, it's warping navigation, and there's radiation, not like nuclear no-Geiger clicks, but biological changes. I've seen people come out of rift zones, altered, not visibly, but different, disoriented, forgetful, like part of them stayed behind. And that's just the people who come back. If you can call what we have now society, cities are gone, not destroyed, removed. Chicago's skyline vanished last fall, not bombed, not burned, just blinked out. Those who were outside the perimeter said it was like watching a curtain drop over the earth. Lights gone, air dead still, silence, then nothing. Governments, scattered, fragmented. Some still broadcast from bunkers. Others pretend it's still business as usual, issuing directives into empty channels. But no one's in charge now. No one can stop it. The survivor groups vary. Some try to rebuild, trade, share, protect. Others, not so much. Scavenger factions, rogue enclaves, the remnant cults, who believe the rifts are a cleansing force, a cosmic judgment. I've seen their symbol circles, inside circles, painted in bone white on rocks, on walls. On bodies.1, group the shard. Communion believes you have to enter a rift willingly to ascend. They take people, tie them up, offer them to the distortion. I've avoided them so far, but it's only getting worse. Something is coming. I feel it in the static, in the pressure behind my eyes, in the way birds fly in spirals and clouds stutter in the sky like corrupted video frames. 2 days ago, I recorded a tone, a frequency I'd never heard before. It wasn't natural. It wasn't random. It repeated 5 notes, then silence. 5 notes, then silence. I checked the wave format. Forms a pattern, symmetrical, almost mathematical, and embedded in the harmonics, Morse code, not yet, but I know this. Riftfall is coming here soon. I've seen the signs. The air smells like metal. My breath fogs, even when it's warm. The light outside bends ever so slightly, left in the shadows. They don't match the objects anymore. I don't know if I'll survive the next pulse. but I'll be broadcasting until I can't. If you're listening, stay away from the lowlands. The soil is shifting. Watch the sky for lightning with no thunder. If you hear the hum, move. And if you see your own reflection where it shouldn't be run, we're not in the same world we were born in. And I don't think it's done changing. The generator's been coughing. That's the best way I can describe it. A low, grinding stutter, like it's trying to breathe through gravel. I've cleaned the contacts, replaced the belt with an old shoelace soaked in wax, and rewired the spark choke twice. Doesn't matter. It's dying, which means the broadcasts might end soon. I might go dark, and that scares me more than the rifts, because if I go silent, who else is left? 2 nights ago, a rift opened 5 clicks east, near the dead freeway. I watched it from the roof ice, stinging, ears ringing from the low pulse it gave off. The distortion was stronger this time. Trees shimmered like candle flames, and the old billboard twisted into something obscene, bent backward like it was trying to kneel. There were people out there when it came, a scavenger crew from the southern valley, judging by the colors tied to their packs. I counted 5 when they went in. Only 2 came out. One was silent, dragging a leg that didn't seem to belong to him longer than the other, bent wrong. The other one laughed all the way down the slope until she collapsed. I heard her bones break when she hit the rocks, but she never stopped laughing. Her eyes had no whites left, just mirror glass. I didn't go down there. I just turned up the signal, held the mic, and kept talking. The water drums are nearly dry. 3 years ago, I dug catch basins, lined them with tarp, even installed copper coils to help draw condensation. Back then, the dew was generous. These days, it's all wrong. It drips sideways, or not at all. This morning, I held a tin cup under the last runoff. The water had a faint shimmer to it like oil butt. I drank it anyway. You learn not to ask too many questions. You drink, or you don't wake up. Food, 2 cans of creamed corn, 1 half bag of desiccated lentils, a sealed ration pack marked property of U.S. Emergency Command that I found in a broken drone last spring. I'm saving it, not for survival, for meaning. A reminder that someone, somewhere, once thought we were worth saving. The solar arrays still holding out, but the panels crackle at odd times, like they're being whispered to by something beneath the surface of the light. Last week, I got visitors, not the kind you want. I was dozing in the tower room, mic off, ears peeled to the open frequency, and then scraping, low, deliberate metal against metal. Not wind, not rift, distortion. People, they came in through the northeast fence. A crew of four-cloaked, in stitched tarps, breathing through filters. Raiders, they didn't speak, just moved through the space with too much confidence, like they'd done it before. One of them had a crowbar etched with rift symbols, circles within circles. I think they were shard communion. I don't keep much that's valuable, but they didn't come for things. They came for me, or at least for the broadcast rig. The oldest of them tried to tear out the transmitter, while another searched for the generator cable. I threw a flare only, had to left end the room, lit up like hell. In the flash, I saw one of them reflected twice, like the light didn't know where to go. They ran after I fired the shotgun once, into the floor. It's old, single shot, last shell. I haven't slept since, 3 nights ago. While scanning bandwidth past the known static thresholds, I caught something. Just a flutter at first, then a voice, faint, distorted, safe waters, still flowing, grid intact, then silence. It didn't repeat. I stayed up until the batteries dipped into the red, but nothing. Still, it hasn't left. My mind, still flowing water, grid intact. It could be nothing, a phantom echo, the last breath of a dead relay. Or it could be something. There have been rumors, even before this, about a place near the old Cascade Range, where the rift activity is low, where the sky still turns blue sometimes, a geothermal hub or bunker from before the collapse, where engineers and climatologists set up a last chance vault. They called it New Eden, though that might just be wishful naming. I always dismissed it. But now, with my rations gone, my water fouled, and the generator breathing its last, now I wonder. Yesterday afternoon, I saw movement in the Ash Valley. At first, I thought it was the wind stirring old debris, but it was too deliberate. A figure, alone, walking with something slung over one shoulder. No vehicle, no animal, just grit and purpose. I raised the scope, couldn't see a weapon, but that doesn't mean anything. Everyone carries something sharp these days. They moved straight for the broadcast tower. I had two options, hide or meet them at the edge. I chose to meet them. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of doors. She was young, maybe 30, maybe less. Dust caked her lips and eyebrows. Her boots were mismatched, and the strap around her waist was made of braided wire. But her eyes were sharp, too sharp for a wanderer. She introduced herself with a name I won't repeat, asked one question, "Are you the one who heard Eden?" That's when I knew it wasn't a hallucination. She'd heard it, too. Now I sit here, writing this, thinking about trust. She's asleep now, curled near the warm battery bank, doesn't snore, barely breathes, but I can see her eyes twitch under. The lids dreaming something restless. I haven't had a guest in months, not since I buried that boy from the southern flats. He'd come for shelter. I gave it, but he wandered into a rift fringe, chasing a deer that wasn't real, came back, without a face. I buried him in salt and whispered whatever words felt holy. Since then, I stopped trusting people. But this one, she didn't ask for food, didn't ask for water, just asked about the signal. She's searching for something, same as me. And if she's heard Eden, then maybe it isn't just a story. Maybe hope isn't a hallucination. Or maybe that's how the rift gets you, offers a dream, pulls you toward it, makes you walk into a mirror you can't come back from. I don't know. I really don't. Tonight, the hum is back, low, constant, the kind that gets into your teeth. I checked the windows lights, bending again, the towers trembling, just enough to feel in the soles of your feet. A rift is forming nearby, too close. The girl, she's awake now. She says we need to leave. Says the signal she followed came from further north. She's traced the bounce pattern, mapped the relay arcs on old paper with a compass that doesn't quite work anymore. She believes the transmission was real. She wants to go now, but this station is all I have left. This is my voice, my post, my place. If I leave, I might not find another signal tower, might never speak into the static again. But if I stay, I might vanish in the next distortion, might become something else, might not come back at all, she says. There's a convoy leaving from the river ruins tomorrow. People gathering, survivors, scientists, engineers. They think they can cross the rift zone safely. They're heading to where the earth still breathes. Steam and the water runs clear. They need a radio operator, so now I face the hardest question since the collapse. Do I stay? Keep the signal alive, even as the world flickers and folds? Or do I follow a stranger into the rift-shadowed north, chasing a rumor of clean water, steady sun, and a power grid that still hums with light? Is hope a lie? Or is it the only real thing we have left? Tomorrow, I'll decide. Tonight, I broadcast. If you're listening, stay alive. This is Redacted, signing off. Maybe for the last time, but maybe not. Maybe I'll find you in Eden. Maybe I'll find myself. The decision was made at sunrise, not with drama, not with speeches or music swelling, just a quiet gesture, a final look back at the tower, the rusted metal walls, the tangled cords, and the hum that had once been the heartbeat of my world. Then I stepped away. I left the tower. I left my voice behind. We moved fast. The girl, she called herself Lanoon, the paths, or at least knew how to feel for them. She followed electromagnetic disruptions like bloodhounds once followed scent. She could see where the rift-thin air shimmered wrong and led us wide of it. It wasn't perfect, but we stayed alive. For days, we climbed north, and then, on the 7th day, just as I began to lose the rhythm of walking, just as my body threatened to collapse from hunger and light deprivation, we found it. It rose out of the ash and ice like a half-buried cathedral in old geothermal outpost wrapped in scaffolding and mirror sheet plating. What used to be a mountaintop power station was now the center of something far bigger. They called it Eden-3. No shining walls, no gardens, but the water ran clear, mineral-rich, from pipes that pulsed with subterranean heat. The solar grid worked, the windmills turned, and deep within the old substation, insulated from the distortions, there was a functioning quantum relay core, still transmitting, still connected to other stations, not just 1.6. They had maps, real maps, satellite, feeds grainy, but still updating in real time, pockets of stability, green zones, rift-locked corridors, even crude climate modeling software that predicted where the next collapse zones might appear. I stood in the central hall with Lena beside me, watching a projection flicker against cracked tile. Weather patterns spiraled across a patchy global map, blinking red for unstable zones. So much of it, almost everything, was red. But there were also pockets of blue dot. Blue meant breathable, livable, recoverable. It wasn't much. Maybe 4% of the planet. But it was something, and then came the proposal. They'd been monitoring my broadcasts for months. Thought I was dead when the station went silent. Now that I was here, they needed me. Not just as a technician, as a voice. They wanted me to help reestablish the emergency broadcast networks, something beyond static and panic, a way to coordinate survivors, a way to reach the others. There were still pockets of civilization fragments that had gone dark, a science barge drifting in the Pacific, an underground facility in what used to be Finland, a satellite lab orbiting just outside the rift line. But to connect them, they'd need someone to go back out, to fix the relay towers, to climb rooftops and install reflectors, to reboot signal lines from abandoned metro stations and overgrown repeater arrays. It would mean exposure, constant risk, walking into distortion zones, facing raiders, facing storms, facing rift events. And it would mean leaving Eden-3. Water, leaving food, leaving safety. I said no, of course. I said no, and then the sky changed. It wasn't like any I'd seen before. I've watched hundreds from the old tower. I've charted their patterns, their pulses, their crimson shadows. But this was something else. A dome of darkness, like a bruise spreading across the sky. The sun vanished mid-morning, and by noon the air tasted like metal. The earth trembled in short, jerking gasps, like it was trying to shake something loose. Someone screamed from the outer ring. Lena grabbed my arm. "It's not bending space anymore," she said, voice almost to calm. "It's eating it." We watched the world vanish in sections, not explode, not burn, just stop, like pieces of the environment were being cut away with a scalpel and erased from reality. The storm was moving southwest, toward the signal towers, toward the last functioning relay in our quadrant. If we lost it, we'd go blind. They gathered in the lower hall, 28 of them scientists, engineers, mechanics, survivors who'd lost families, limbs, entire cities. No one volunteered. Why would they? They'd made it to Eden 3. Why go back into the nightmare? Why risk unraveling? That's when Lena spoke. She said, "He'll go." I looked at her, stunned. "You don't get to decide that. You already did," she replied. "The moment you left your tower, you're not just a voice, you're a signal. And the world still needs signals." It should have made me angry, but it didn't, because she was right. We prepared in 3 hours, rations, filters, tools. I strapped a new transmitter pack to my back and stuffed old maps into my coat lining. They gave me a pistol with 2 rounds, 4 emergencies, they said. I didn't ask what kind. The team wired me to the satellite feed and gave me a coms link to Eden 3. One of the engineers, an older man with rift burns on half his face, clasped my hand before I left and said, "If you hear singing in the static, turn back." I didn't ask what that meant either. Some things you don't want answers to. I reached relay node 12 just before the storm. It was worse than they'd predicted. The relay was half sunk into a pool of liquefied asphalt, the air above it pulsing, like a heart under strain. I had one chance. I climbed the tower. Every step burned. The distortion made my body feel like it was made of glass. I could hear things, versions of myself whispering from the steel. Memories out of order, conversations I'd never had. Somewhere around the 3rd rung, I remembered a life that didn't belong to me. A wife, a boy, a boat on a lake that never existed. I kept climbing at the top. I pulled the old relay hard reset lever, slammed in the new core disk, and activated the beacon burst. For 10 full seconds, the tower sang taut, pure, clear, a tone that cut through everything, the storm, the static, the lies. I collapsed next to the dish dot and watched the clouds recoil. I'm in a recovery pod now, somewhere near the outer basin. Lena's voice crackles through the comm every few hours. We lost 2 other nodes, but the relay held and the storm retreated. It didn't vanish, but it paused, like it had been startled, like it had heard something it didn't expect. Hope, maybe doubt, or defiance. The engineers say the signal bounce from my relay reached 3 other survivor hubs. We've re-established partial contact with the Pacific barge. We got a message from a lab in the Andes.N yesterday. A short burst transmission from the moon. 1 word, alive. I don't know if I'm a hero. I don't even know if I'm healed. But I know this. We are not alone. The world is broken, bent, twisted by rift lines and silence and loss, but not empty. There are voices, and where there are voices, there can be signals, and where there are signals, there is still a chance to be heard. So, if you're listening, this is redacted. I came back, and still broadcasting the storm didn't end with a bang. It just stopped, like someone had thrown a switch in the sky. The dome of distortion dissolved into threads, and those threads vanished into nothing. One moment, reality had been groaning under its own weight, bent and bruised and tearing at the seams, and the next, silence, not peace, just quiet. It was the kind of quiet that unsettled the bones. When I limped back into Eden 3, I didn't recognize it at first. The landscape was the same. Sure black volcanic ridges, geothermal vents, coughing pale steam, but the air felt lighter, less charged. The static buzz in the back of my teeth was gone. Something had shifted. The storm had retreated, not fully, but enough for a breath, enough for a signal to pass through unbroken. They told me the relay worked, that my broadcast bounced, that faint, flickering lights had come back on in the bunkers beneath what used to be eastern Greenland, that a raft colony off the flooded California archipelago had picked up the message and sent one back. We're here. We're alive. Keep speaking. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about connection. Let me paint you a picture, no gloss, no pretense, just what I see now, standing at the edge of the world. There's no going back. The rift didn't simply tear holes through cities or forests. It carved through rules. It remade distance, rewrote seasons. I've watched trees grow backwards. I've seen rain fall upwards. I've seen men vanish mid-sentence, leaving only their breath hanging in cold air. The environment hasn't healed, but it's changed. The wilds are stranger now. The plants that grow in rift-touched zones have warped-twisted in shape, yes, but also stronger, resistant. Some glow faintly in the dark. Others release oxygen in quantities far greater than anything we knew before. It's not the earth. I dream of the climb, my hands slipping, my eyes seeing other versions of myself walking backward down the rungs, while I clawed upward. I still hear the voices in the steel, but I also hear real voices now. Lena's laughter echoing off the steel corridors of Eden 3, the engineers humming while calibrating the new beacon dish. Children, real children, playing in the geothermal. Garden system.children that broke me a little. You spend so long alone, broadcasting into nothing, and suddenly there are children again, drawing on walls, asking if they can speak into the mic, asking what the world was like before. How do you answer that? How do you describe oceans that stayed where they were supposed to, or stars that didn't drift in broken spirals across the sky? You don't. You talk about now. You tell them what we've got, what we might still make. Before the collapse, I was a voice in a booth. I didn't lead. I didn't risk. I reported. I cataloged. I survived now. One run a relay team. 3 of us go out every week to check perimeter towers, to deliver equipment to new zones. I've taught to others how to broadcast, trained a medic on how to rig up an emergency weather beacon. I'm not the strongest or the fastest, but I know how to keep people connected. And somehow, in this broken world, that might be more important than strength, because we're not just rebuilding systems, we're rebuilding stories, And stories are how we survive. We've charted 15 stable zones in the last month. That's 15 more than we had before. Some are smaller, single ridge, a rock formation untouched by collapse. Others are growing, places where the air stays consistent, where time flows in one direction again. Places where people are building the Pacific Raft Colony. They're experimenting with rift-resistant crops. The Finnish outpost built a weather model that actually predicts rift storms with a 67% accuracy. It's not a cure, but it's a start. We're also seeing signs, just signs, that nature, left alone, is adapting faster than we are. Microbial growth in rift zones shows high radiation resistance. Amphibians with doubled lung capacity. Certain birds are learning to navigate through distortion pockets instinctively, avoiding vanish zones. It's not healing in the way we thought. It would, but it is changing, and so are we. I've resumed my broadcasts, not just from Eden 3 but Mobile, wherever the relay van reaches. We rebuilt an antenna into the hood and hardwired it into the old radio boards. We call it the beacon. Every night I go live. Some nights I read old letters. Other nights I tell people where new water sources have been found. Sometimes I just speak into the silence, reminding anyone out there that we're still here, that they're not alone. I've received replies now, dozens, some coded, some whispered, some sung in strange languages that Lena says might be dialects fractured by rift exposure. But they're all the same, in essence. We heard you. We're listening. We're surviving. What's changed? Everything and nothing. The world is still hard, still terrifying, still scattered, but I am different. I used to think survival meant hiding, waiting, enduring in silence. Now I know. Survival means transmitting, connecting, hoping, even when logic says not. To Dot, I know I won't live forever. None of us will. Maybe the world never heals fully. Maybe the rift continues, like a scar running across the mind of the planet. But we are here, and we are telling our story. That's enough. If you're hearing this, wherever you are, in whatever time, on whatever version of Earth you're standing, on, you're not forgotten, you're not lost. You matter. Keep building, keep listening, keep speaking. This is Redacted, broadcasting from Eden 3, and I'll be back on the air tomorrow. Same hour, same heartbeat, same hope. That there's a single moment, the last leaf falls, the last light flickers, the last voice cracks it. It's over, a clean break. Curtains down, but no. The end, as I've come to understand it, is a slow erosion, a long, aching unraveling. And what comes after is something else entirely. Not rebirth, not redemption, but survival. Raw, uneven, imperfect survival. Yesterday, one of the scouts returned from Zone 9B near the ruins of Old Montreal. Her voice was shaking. She carried with her something we hadn't seen in years. A pine seedling Dot alive. No glow, no distortion, no fungal overgrowth. Just a green, trembling sapling wrapped in a cloth, scavenged from an old curtain. The soil there, she said, felt different, cool to the touch. The sky held a blue tint for the first time in a decade, and no whispers, no hum. In her bones, no flickers in time. We sent a team this morning to study the anomaly. That's what we call the anomalies. Things that shouldn't be. Things that might still save us. There's no guarantee it will last. Maybe the rift will reclaim it tomorrow, bend it sideways, into nothing. But for today, we have the seedling. And for today, it is enough. Life doesn't offer much in the way of comfort these days. The temperature still swings. 40 degrees in a single night. Dust storms still boil out of the inland canyons like angry ghosts. Foods tight, water tighter every day is a ledger of what we lose and what we manage to keep, but the routine that helps. I start the day patching wire, mending boots, reading data logs. I teach the younger ones how to track weather patterns, how to listen for the soft hiss in the air before a rift flickers open. I show them how to map the anomalies, how to triangulate safe zones with nothing but a copper wire and a compass that barely works. I've found comfort in usefulness. I've stopped asking when the world will go back to normal. I don't think it will, but maybe that's not the right question anymore. Maybe the better question is, what can we make from what's left? Some nights I still hear their voices, not the whispers from the rift knot anymore. Those have faded into the background like wind in the vents. No, I mean the real voices. My wife, Ava, my son, Jacob, my team from the early days before the broadcast tower collapsed and took half of them with it. The ones who didn't make it to Eden 3. I talk to them sometimes, out loud, when no one else is around, just to hear the shape of their names in the dark. It helps me remember I wasn't always alone, that I was someone before the world cracked. In two, loss never becomes easier. You just learn to move around it, like a collapsed building on your route to. Don't go through it, but you never forget it's there. People talk about hope like it's a blazing torch, a rally cry, but that's not what it's like for me. Hope now is small, quiet, a flicker behind tired eyes. It's in the sound of a child laughing at a bad joke, in the steam from a shared cup of water, in the way the stars still burn, even when the sky doesn't behave like it used to. The rift never cared about our laws, our systems, or our boundaries. But maybe, just maybe it didn't care about killing everything. Either something remains, we remain. And even if the world we knew is gone, the want to make something better out of what's left that lives. That's what I hold on to, if you're listening. Maybe you're somewhere deep underground, running off geothermal rigs. Maybe you're drifting through flooded suburbs on a barge patched with memories. Maybe you're in a zone where gravity doesn't always hold, but your will does. Wherever you are, keep going. Don't wait for the world to be fixed before you start building again. Don't wait for someone to give you permission to survive. Do it anyway. Grow something in whatever dirt you find. Build a signal tower out of rust and prayer. Make music with old cans if you have to. Just make something real, something that tells the next survivor who stumbles across your camp. I was here. I didn't quit. The generator hums low tonight. The antenna is catching dust again. The humidity gauge flickers between sane and impossible. I'll be back. On the air tomorrow, same time. But before I go, before I let this message dissolve into static, I want to say this. You are not forgotten. You are not broken beyond repair. Even in a fractured world, especially in a fractured world, your voice matters. Stay kind, stay clever, stay human, even if the sky falls again, even if the land folds inside out.